All right. I think we are ready to get started this day. It's great to have everybody here. Thank you for joining us for the second in our healthcare visibility webinar series. Today's program is titled The New Patient Journey: What Every Health System Should Know. As I mentioned, this is the second in our series. It's brought to you by our agency, Alloy. We're an integrated marketing and communications agency that helps organizations around the country navigate a rapidly changing marketing and communications landscape. We bring together strategy, brand, digital, creative, public relations, and paid media expertise to help health systems, hospitals, and physician groups build stronger communications with patients, strengthen their reputations, and drive measurable growth. My name is Alex Lohr. I serve as the head of our healthcare practice at Alloy, and I'm very happy to be moderating today's webinar, which includes some great colleagues of mine, and we're going to dig in a little bit further on this topic. I want to say thank you today to my colleague Georgia, who's put a lot of work together behind the scenes. She's going to assist me in advancing this presentation and moderating our chat as well. Georgia, if you could please advance to the next slide. For those who were with us last time or those who weren't, I'd mentioned this is the second in our series. We had a great conversation last month with two healthcare leaders to kick off this healthcare visibility series, and that was titled Healthcare Marketing Isn't Working Like It Used to. So we were really grateful to have with us Abby Luderick, who's president at AML Strategic Communications Incorporated, has a long career in the marketing C-suite for health systems, and Jason Madsen, who's a founder and CEO of Ascend Medical, which is a chain of primary care, behavioral health, and urgent care facilities throughout the Southeast. Excellent leaders, both of them, with great insights into what they were seeing. And some of the takeaways that came from that discussion, you see on the right there. First, healthcare marketing and its landscape have changed. The traditional playbook is no longer sufficient. And by that, we mean that having your owned assets in marketing and driving people through those doesn't work anymore. Patients have a lot more ways to choose and evaluate and discover healthcare options, and their journeys are not linear. They're generally bouncing back and forth from a lot of different platforms and a lot of different algorithms. And ultimately, those interpret health systems before a patient ever reaches the website. If you could advance to the next slide, please, Georgia. We shared some statistics in our last call. I bring those again today just to underpin the conversation we're about to have, but I find these really fascinating. Approximately 60% of consumers research healthcare options online before selecting a provider. So the internet is generally the first place people go, 60% of the time, to figure out what kind of care they're going to receive and whom they're going to choose. The other thing that's fascinating now is that AI-generated summaries appear in more than 80% of health-related searches. So for the 60% of individuals who go online, 80% of them are being served AI-generated content that drives their decision-making. And here's where it gets really interesting, especially with respect to Google. There are more than 2 billion users who are exposed to Google AI reviews. And when they're exposed to those AI reviews, the outcomes are really interesting. Patients click traditional search results only 8% of the time when a Google AI-generated summary appears, versus 15% when no AI summary is present. That is to say that when an AI summary is present, it reduces the normal behavior of patients by 50%. For historically powerful brands that have always been visible playing by the old rules, Google AI overviews reduce click-through rates to top-ranking pages by approximately 34.5%, and in some analyses by as much as 58%. So the game has really changed. How websites are visible has really changed. And in healthcare, that means that your efforts to try to attract patients have become a lot more difficult. If you move ahead to the next slide, please, Georgia. We're going to take that diagnosis from our last discussion, and today we're going to move to prescription. So I'm really happy to welcome Alloy subject matter experts today for a really insightful discussion. And we're going to cover it in 3 acts. The first act, we're going to talk about the patient journey and how it's changed, but also did healthcare marketing change? In Act 2, we will talk about what actually creates visibility and trust. And then in Act 3, to close the discussion today, what marketers should do differently starting tomorrow morning. I'll mention as well, at the end of this discussion for the last 10 or 15 minutes, we have time built in for interactive Q&A. So we'll dedicate the last 15 minutes to that. If you would like to drop a question in the chat today at any point, please do so. And then we will work to try to cover as many of those questions as we can with the time that we have left. But now I'd like to move ahead to the next slide and introduce our panelists today. I'm excited because I get to work with these people every day. It's going to be exciting for me to share their wit and witticism and talents with you. The first of those is my colleague Charlie Legg, who's going to address media and search. Charlie is Vice President of Media at Alloy. He has over 20 years of experience in omni-channel planning, media strategy, and paid search. Charlie helps brands improve visibility, drive performance, and connect with audiences across an increasingly complex digital landscape. He's a fantastic colleague of mine. I know he's going to have great insights today. Charlie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. Next slide, please. Andrea Ryan will be our subject matter expert on organic growth and authority. She's Vice President of Organic Growth and Authority at Alloy, where she leads integrated communication strategies that help brands build credibility, shape market perception, and earn visibility across traditional and emerging channels. She has more than 20 years of experience in B2B technology, PR, messaging, and content strategy. She works closely with clients to align earned media, thought leadership, and AI era search visibility into communications programs. I've had a lot of conversations as we serve as clients in the healthcare space with Andrea. PR is becoming more and more valuable. It always was, even to a greater degree today, and her insights are really fantastic. So Andrea, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
And finally, Jeremy Hill, talking about insights and intelligence. He's our VP of Insights and Intelligence at Alloy. He leads cross-channel performance interpretation, measurement standards, and executive reporting across paid media, SEO, PR, and web. He serves as program lead for Alloy's AI Center of Excellence and works closely with healthcare clients to translate how platforms interpret a brand into decisions organizations can act on. The other thing I'll say about Jeremy is our shepherd and guru, all things AI related as we're training the organization. We have a lot of great leaders, but Jeremy's the one who's offering AI hours for members of our organization. And his work touches insights and analytics, web design and development recommendations, a whole lot of different areas that are going to bring value to the discussion today. So we're really happy to have Jeremy. Jeremy, welcome.
Thanks, Alex.
All right. Well, why don't we dive into the panel discussion? First question and our first act. Forgive me here as I get my papers ready. The patient journey has changed. Did healthcare marketing change? And Jeremy, I'm going to start with a question for you. In the run-up to our prep for this webinar today, you made an interesting point in preparing for the discussion. The patient decision has moved upstream of anything you can see. What do you mean by that?
Well, Alex, the change and the shift is not that our patients are looking or using AI. So we can tell that the illusion to go to the AI for search has increased like 20% over the last 18 months. So that's not the question. The shift is that the patients are using AI and forming opinions about the healthcare system before they even land on the site. So what that does is they've got an idea of what they want to do with the healthcare system and why they're there, and they've used directories and things to see that. So that is something that our analytics can't touch. So if we're losing people in that initial piece where they're searching in AI, that's something, the gap that we need to fill.
Charlie and Andrea, as you look at the same point from Jeremy, piggyback on that, I'd love to hear your thoughts from your specific areas of oversight.
Yeah, absolutely. I think spot on. The journey has changed, right? And a few things have changed, not just the journey, how people are searching, and what they're searching for, right? So it's not just the shift to kind of AI overviews and generative AI insights. It's also social functioning in a bigger way as a search engine, right? And for search, and then what folks are searching for, right? Not necessarily going directly to a brand or a physician, but going to starting with a symptom or starting with some form of condition or research, right? And the reality is, a lot of patients are making decisions upstream. Up to 60% to 70% of folks are making that decision before they even get to your website. So it's just more critical than ever that we are thinking about how, as a brand, and how brands are engaging within that upper to mid funnel.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that's great points, Charlie, just to piggyback on that quickly. Really, when we think about it from a narrative point of view, the health system no longer fully controls its narrative through its website. That used to be the case, and those days are really gone. The proliferation of AI tools and LLMs are really pushing patients to look for answers through third-party information. And that's where a lot of the things on the PR side of the house come into play, right? So news coverage, reviews, physician reputation, those sorts of things, forums, you've got Reddit, you've got social, you've got all these things that are really influencing how patients see your organization, how they feel about it, and where they want to seek out their care. So, the website, of course, will always be important, but it's really no longer the only front door, so to speak.
Sure, sure. Charlie, a question for the group. Charlie, I'd like to start with you on this. If a lot of the decision happens before someone reaches the website, what signals are shaping whether a health system or a provider even enters the consideration set?
Yeah, I think when you talk about signals, you really have to think about it through the lens of structured and unstructured, right? And I think health systems have done a really good job of focusing on the structured signals, and those signals being more machine readable, right? And more around algorithms and how you show up. But the real opportunity is the unstructured signals overall. So that's more about those environments where as Andrea mentioned, Reddit, some of these other environments, reviews, where sentiment is really valuable, important, and having impact and influence on the conversations that are happening in the market really plays a much larger role and presents a much greater opportunity for health systems to focus on moving forward.
That's great, Charlie. Thank you very much. I'm interested, Jeremy, about inputs at sites. I mean, that's the other side of this piece. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of these signals that we're talking about, and I echo much of what Charlie said, but they're not all that glamorous. So people don't put a lot of effort, teams don't think about it, but this is what the AI is using to drive traffic and users to your site. So things like accurate directories, the Google My Business pages. So you've got information out there about insurance and the hours and the phone numbers to reach the right people. If those are wrong, then what AI is feeding the potential patient is not going to be right. So when they get to the website, it could look as beautiful and glamorous and perfectly built and all of these things. But if it's not lining up to what their expectation is, that's where you're going to lose your patient's interest and the potential revenue.
Andrea, as we talk about this as well, and I've mentioned this in the run up to it. It's amazing how much overlap there is in everybody's work. But the other question that I would have is about external authority. So how does external authority play a role in this when we think about the signals?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, all these silos are really collapsing for sure. So everything Jeremy said about that on-site content, supplying the facts, and there's so much importance there, but we really have to think about off-site content as well. So those external authority sources, again, the media sources, third-party validated sources, those are really going to be critical to making sure that we're establishing credibility for the organization. So physician thought leadership, that's a huge thing too. So not only knowing that the physician's names and places and everything is accurate, but what are they saying and how are they saying it and where are they saying it is so important now. It's great for a health system to say themselves that they're excellent, but it's really different when you have, an outside credible source repeatedly saying that and also demonstrating why. So.
Sure. Andrea, I'm going to stay with you on this one. We see a lot of our clientele in healthcare delivery, where they're health systems or hospitals or groups, really scared because they don't control the narrative. If AI and patients are forming impressions from health information that the health system doesn't own, how much control does an organization really have over its narrative? Address that a little bit and maybe assuage some of the concerns of those organizations.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a scary time for a lot of people. There's a lot of change, for sure. So yes, AI, of course, it has influence, but it is not complete control. There is still an opportunity for a healthcare system and organization to control their narrative and really create, if we want to call it like narrative density around the clinical areas that are very important to them. So, for example, we work with some health systems that are very interested in controlling a narrative around orthopedics. So there's an opportunity there to create meaningful earned media placements, expert activations, awards. Again, that authoritative third-party validation that's really going to influence what people see and how they see it. And that, again, can give you some control over what the AI systems also are quoting. So we have not completely lost control here by any means.
Charlie and Jeremy, I'd love to get your thoughts on this as well. Is there, as we think about these particular areas and controlling the narrative, what is encouragement that you can give tactically for healthcare entities?
Yeah, I think Jeremy hit on some of this earlier with, updating your Google business, profiles and things of that nature, but it's also the third party,
Yeah.
platforms that also are equally important, right? So the health grades and the WebMDs of the world, right? Treating those as an extension of your own channels and making sure that you're thinking about how content's showing up in those spaces as well, especially with folks focused more on researching and sourcing conditions, and other things online.
And from an analytics and intelligence side, Jeremy, how do you know? How can you figure out?
So what I would do, Alex, is I would take it a step before what Andrea and Charlie are saying. So anybody on the call can do this. So open ChatGPT and start asking the questions that your patient asks. Things like who's the best cardiologist near me? What are the hours? Do they take my insurance? Like establishing what your patient is searching for will help you get to where the mentions that Andrea and Charlie are talking about, and like filling those gaps. We need this to fix these questions, because this is what our patient wants to know.
It sounds like you're advising people to replicate the patient journey and pretend that they are the patient and then understand what the delta is between what they think and what they're actually seeing with the LLMs.
That's exactly right. I think all too often we like to, as marketers, we like to think of things and how we would ask the question. But what we really need to do is step back and think about how our users are going to use the AI. What are they going to ask? Don't think about complete sentences and paragraphs. Think about these quick one-off phrases like, location hours or things like that. You have to think the way the patient's going to think in order to fill the needs that they have.
Jeremy, that dovetails really nicely as we kind of change directions here. Let's go into Act Two and talk about what actually creates visibility and trust. I'll throw this out to the group, but I'll start with you, Jeremy. Where is the biggest disconnect between what health organizations, healthcare delivery organizations intend patients to experience and what patients actually need?
I think one of the things that we see all too often is that the healthcare system wants to feed a ton of service line related content to the patient. So if the patient searches anywhere and they land on hundreds of pages or hundreds of words about cardiology or orthopedics or what have you, the patients, they want the answer fast. They want to know those answers to the questions that I just mentioned. Do you take my insurance? When can I get in? Is this doctor any good? What we've seen is that a lot of people won't even make it to the website if your review ratings are below 4. The numbers drastically decrease after if you're in the 3s. So or 3 stars. So getting the answers fast. Don't give them the whole dictionary, but give them answers to the questions that they're asking.
Charlie, what in your work, what do you see as the disconnect?
Yeah, I think we talked about directories and physician profiles, I think are an important part of this conversation, right? It's not just about experience and showing up as a credential. How are you showing up as, developing a relationship, right? And showing that you're more of an authentic and personalization approach to connecting with individuals and prospective patients to want to build a relationship with you, and patients asking themselves, is this physician not just good at what they do, but will they listen to me? Do they have my best interest? So really building that trust through content versus more focus on credentials themselves.
Andrea, you and I had a funny conversation that PR is now the fair-haired child again.
Yeah.
Always doing good work, always working hard, but now all of a sudden, people are super excited about creating content by third parties going to live elsewhere. Talk a little bit about how PR is playing a role in that. Talk a little bit about the vacuum that can exist without the creation of good stories that are shared by other entities.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Really, we have to keep in mind external sources are going to fill that vacuum, so to speak. If there's no information, they're going to fill it in, right, with either credible information or inaccurate information. So, if your organization isn't creating these really robust, credible stories around things like outcomes and expertise and patient needs, the external sources are going to define the reputation of your organization and define the answers elsewhere. So there is this opportunity to use the elements of PR, like awards and media relations and those sorts of things, to create that very highly reputable content. That again, if you put yourself in the shoes of the patient, that they're going to be searching out and looking for to answer their questions.
I have a question for this group. I'll throw out to all of you. This webinar was tentatively titled, "Is it time for a new healthcare website?" And we keep hearing that a lot as well. That's a discussion. And I think that's scary for a lot of healthcare entities too, for a variety of reasons, not least of which is it's expensive and it's time consuming. So let's tackle that question directly. Can a redesign be productive? Does it solve the visibility problem? Do health systems need to do it? Do they have to do it? Oh, let me throw this one to Jeremy. Why don't you get started?
That's I'm very fond of building websites, so I'm partial on that side of things. But really, when you're rebuilding or redesigning a website, you're really just changing the room that the patient walks into, right? So you're not changing who told the patients to go to the room
Yeah.
or changing the way. So you really need to spend some of that budget of the rebuild on things like directory accuracy, the insurance information, making sure all of those details are out there and search can grab them and AI can grab them. One of the things that Andrea said in the previous question, she was talking about the void, the content void. There's something else there as well. Even if there's not a void and there is content out there, if it's not updated, that's what AI is going to grab. So it'll go and grab 5-year-old content. It'll grab 5-year-old data. So keeping that updated as well. So when you're working through this redesign or redevelopment of a website, like it's important to get those structural pieces right. Right? It could be the flashiest, most beautiful, crazy functionality website you've ever built, but if it's not crossing checking those boxes, it's not going to perform the way you expect it to.
That's great. Thank you. Charlie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Jeremy said it well. The analogy of walking into a room, right? And I think the reality is it's not the first room you're walking into anymore. So while there's value and certainly, best practice for making sure that brands are increasing AI visibility, having the house in order through the website and the functionality and the knowing it's the destination that's where the patients are going, whether they've made the decision or once they've gotten there, right? I think the reality is it's not solving the upstream problem. So some of those other rooms, what are those other rooms that they're walking into first? That could be a YouTube video that's talking more about a symptom or a condition, right? And I think the challenge for a lot of marketers is just it's related to attribution, right? That's the elephant in the room because we can't prove the attribution for the upper funnel the way we can for search and other tactics. So there tends to be just a mindset that it may not be as valuable because it can't be proved, but it certainly creates a deficit if marketers aren't focused on those tactics.
And I hope these answers are giving hope to people who are on the call, or at least giving hope to people who are preparing budgets for them. But I throw this over to you, Andrea. What does a new site do that absent of any sort of PR or media relations efforts? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, a beautiful website is a must. Obviously, you want something that's great. And to these guys' points, that is often a door that people are walking through, but it isn't the front door now anymore. So at the end of the day, a website is really still the organization talking about itself in a lot of ways. Whereas these external sources, whether that's regional business publications, national pubs, trade pubs, those sorts of external sites, those are the sites that are going to provide the references and the validation that your website really can't create by itself. So, putting a lot of time and money and effort around the website is wonderful, but forgetting the external validation side is really a miss. So they have to go hand in hand.
As Andrea, I'll stay with you on this one, and team, I'd love for you to address this. As we talked about some of these functions collapsing and spilling
Mhm.
over. There are a lot of gray lines, and people are moving in different lanes. Where do you see PR, SEO, paid media, and web analytics operating in silos as you look across the client base at Alloy? And what are the negative outcomes when that happens?
Yeah, it's great. It's a really great question. PR is generally going to generate these high authority coverage, but the problem is we often see they're not really coordinating around search intent. So, we mentioned earlier, what are patients looking for? What questions are they asking? We really need to make sure that we're weaving that into the earned media and the outreach that we're putting out there. Also, have to think about it from the SEO and web teams. Those teams are really pursuing authority, but may not be leveraging those earned media wins. So there's some gaps that still exist. And I think, the organizations that are doing it right are connecting these disciplines and are really using PR and earned media to build that authority, and then using the other areas to amplify that authority across all of the different channels.
Charlie, what are you seeing as you work with our client base?
Yeah, I agree with Andrea, and I think it's really about, for paid specifically, focusing more, going beyond the demand we're already capturing and the people that already know you, right? And making sure that even from an intent perspective, that we're thinking about intent from a perspective of people that don't know who you are, right? And trying to build that relationship and then identifying those channels where you can have success for engagement.
Jeremy, as we think about analytics and intelligence, is there a function that can perform that breaks down some of this siloing?
Yeah, I think this has long been a problem in marketing where your channel teams have their siloed KPIs. And the way that the industry is changing and the way that AI is shifting things, there has to be some sort of connective measurement. And what we're seeing is like that connective piece is a shared visibility metric, right? So what does that look like, and how do you start to build something like that? And the team here at Alloy started to do some of that with our brand, our brand health index. It's pulling in
Mhm.
AI and a lot of different metrics into something that gives you that performance aspect of things. So it's trying to unlock
Yeah.
that we've used this analogy tons through this call, but that front door that we talk about, it's hard to measure. We're trying to crack that nut and find how to do that and where can we capture the patients there.
As we I'm going to stay with you, Jeremy, as we pivot to the final section. So this crew is giving hope to individuals who are on this call in a lot of different ways. But here's a really practical section. We'll talk about what marketers should do differently starting tomorrow morning based on your input. So, Jeremy, if I start with you, if health system leaders are watching today and they suspect that they have a visibility problem, what is one diagnostic you would tell them to run before authorizing another major investment? So what's a good next step for them?
Well, the plus side is a lot of our partners and the healthcare systems are going to have SEO metrics. They're going to have those search metrics, right? So they have an idea of what search is driving. What they don't have is where that AI answer piece. So the first thing to do would be to find that piece. And we talked a little bit about it earlier, but go into a search engine and start running an AI answer audit, asking it questions that your patient's going to ask, and then you start to cross-reference what search is driving and what AI is driving. And the gap there is the one that you need to fill, be it with content, be it with your directory listings, be it with all of the things that the other two guys have mentioned previously.
Charlie, I'd love to get your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, and it's kind of similar to the previous response, but I mean, starting to look at brand versus non-branded discovery by service line, right? So really trying to understand at the end of the day where the majority of that demand is coming from. If it's coming from the folks that already know you, there's a larger opportunity that's being missed, right? So really looking at metrics within paid search alone, like impression share loss to rank, can give you a good indicator of just how competitive you are against high intent non-branded terms, right? So how well are you doing in that space, and make sure you're maximizing the return on investment there, knowing that there is a broader pool of discovery and demand that and potential for the organization.
Andrea, what steps would you encourage people to take related to earned authority?
Yeah, it's a great question. Similar to what Charlie and Jeremy mentioned, really it's starting to audit the sources that AI is using when they're describing your organization and its competitors. So, there's lots of tools out there you can do this. It's simple Google search, some other tools out there that are easy to use, to look at and see, is AI citing competitor coverage? Are they citing third-party reviews or other sources, while your actual expertise is absent? That's going to indicate that you have an earned authority gap.
If as we think about those recommendations, once you have to take action, everybody has limited resources. They need to understand what they could do. I'll ask each of you, starting with Jeremy, if you could redirect one area of investment or recommend that your clients in the healthcare space do that to improve visibility and patient choice, where would you move that and why?
I think the answer is clear. You have to put more time and effort into the AI answering, the answer piece of things. So doing the research, starting to run those tests, and building uh, some sort of measurement table, something to look at so that you've got historic data. You can start to see how things are trending, how things are moving, what the change log is showing you, and what it's accomplishing or not. Uh, it's not flashy. It's time consuming. It's going to take some effort, but it's where you move the needle now in the way that AI is driving things through that journey.
Well, I think a lot of our healthcare clientele that we've worked with, over the last year, I say year and a half, this is the year for me that AI got real in a lot of different ways. We've been hearing about it forever and ever. We've worked with them to create the foundations. And I think as I'm hearing you correctly, it's just the development of the foundational data that people can move against moving forward. Charlie, what are your thoughts as a redirection of investment and a smart move for players who are in this space?
Yeah, I think from a paid perspective, and we've talked about this a little bit already, but it's giving ourselves permission to move upstream and doing it with confidence and conviction, even if the data isn't there to say from an attribution perspective. So more of that educational content, whether that's YouTube, digital video, certainly more investment in social for sure as that relationship engine for health systems and all marketers. But I think really that presents a opportunity that not just gets to people in the first room that they visit or their first stop. It also, at the end of the day, has a halo effect for brand, right? And it's really going to help the brand out as well.
That's great. Andrea, where should we redirect some investment in this brave new world?
Yep. Really, from a PR and earned media perspective, it's shifting the dollars, the budget, the resources away from this idea of, really generic content volume. So, we see a lot of organizations putting a lot of time and effort towards press releases, which they have their purpose. But what I would recommend is shifting some of that over to more to like very concentrated, very thoughtful, intentional digital PR and that expert activation. So earned media, clinical insight, thought leadership, and again, focusing on those very high authority external references. That's really going to strengthen how patients, but also AI understands your organization.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Um, this really draws a close to our program portion. I hope that people who have watched today have gotten good answers and really a modicum of hope as they move into this space. It can be really scary. It's working quickly, but as we discussed today, there are really easy ways that organizations cost effectively can do an assessment of what visibility looks like. Our panelists today have talked about some easy steps that they can take to do it and to create a foundation moving forward. The first step is admitting you have a problem. And we've got some really easy steps from there that allow you to determine what sort of opportunities that you have, where gaps exist, and what you can do. And although we develop wonderful websites, I was really happy to hear that everybody who's listening on this call doesn't have to blow up their website and start over. There are a lot of great things that they can do in the interim. Nonetheless, the way that patients are finding us, or the way that referral sources are directing patients to find us, are changing. It is certainly not linear anymore, and it's not all owned assets that are going to happen. So it's an exciting time, and I'm grateful for this panel for sharing their insights for folks who are on this call today about steps that they can take to grow the health of their organizations and continue to acquire new patients the way they want to. At this point, if Georgia would be so kind as to pull our deck back up, thank you very much. We are going to move into the Q&A portion of our discussion. We have a few questions, and I say if you would like to and you want to drop those into the chat, you certainly can do that. I'm going to take a look here really quickly. So as these come in, I'm throwing these out to the group, and anybody who wants to respond can respond. And I think that would be great too. So I also appreciate the audience's uh, grace as I'm throwing these out, and these are the first blush responses of our team members who are going to do a great job, but a little bit of surprise for everybody. So let's start with a first question, open to anybody in the group. How do you measure success when more of the patient decision happens before a website visit and traffic may decline? So how do you measure success in that scenario?
Yeah, I'll start there. And I think we talked about it a little bit. So we're not, when we talk about attribution for some of those tactics, we're not blind, right? Like we're not coming from a place of not being able to draw, indications to performance. I think there are indicators that we can look at. If you're growing your branded search, demand and volume over time, that's a strong indicator that your upper funnel is working and contributing to the funnel overall, right? So I think that it's really kind of leaning into what are those indicators? What intelligence do we have that we can, link to that greater story for is this working or is this not working? And then I know Jeremy mentioned too, a lot of the work we're doing here at Alloy with our brand health indexes and things like that. Just re-looking at ways that we can get to more concise measurement there.
Great. Any other
Yeah,
thoughts?
Alex.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think it still boils down to completed appointments. All right. So if your website traffic's dropping and your appointments are staying, in a good place, that tells you that your AI
Mhm.
aspect or your presence in AI is doing fine.
Mhm.
Right. So if your traffic drops and your appointments drop and you start to see the appointments drop, then you can see that maybe, AI is not doing the work that it needs to be done.
Mhm.
I would add to that as well from my experience that and it's certainly not our Alloy team, but it happens within our industry that marketing occasionally provides measures that really are indeed measures and show volume and show activity. But it's easy to confuse motion with action sometimes. And in the end, you're exactly right. If this is about anything, it's matching up patients to the care they need on a fast basis where there is access. So that's a wonderful point, Jeremy. Okay, so sorry, Andrea, this one is going to come to you. But I know that you can handle this one definitely. How can PR and earned media teams coordinate more effectively with SEO and digital teams without creating another layer of process?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, it's something we have struggled with, at Alloy and across some accounts as we're breaking down a lot of these silos. But I think at the end of the day, it's really important to remember that all of these teams, we all have the same goal, visibility, brand authority, audience engagement. So, when these teams operate in silos, you lose out on, meeting these goals. But when you can kind of create and integrate existing workflows where you work together instead of creating new ones, that's going to be super helpful. Really bridging that gap also relies on things like focusing on shared input, shared tools, shared definitions of success. So the inputs and things that the SEO team is getting should inform what PR is doing. Same with the digital side of the house as well, and the paid. So, we're not asking SEO to write press releases, and the SEO team isn't asking us to do keyword research, but we can start at the beginning with, again, what's that shared goal? What is the story? What's the narrative we want to tell from the very start and align in that way?
All right, Charlie and Jeremy, do you think Andrea's right?
Yes.
I tend to lean
Great.
that way always. Yes.
Good. How should a health system decide which physicians, let me see, which physicians or clinical programs to prioritize for thought leadership and external authority building? Let me throw that out to the group. And I'll read it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How should a health system decide which physicians or clinical programs to prioritize for thought leadership and external authority building? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think really, and again, it all just comes back to content and content optimization and, how that's really being built into showing up comprehensively across all touch points, right? And having that greater halo effect for the brand at the end of the day.
I think it's back to that AI answer
Hmm.
statement. What are they looking for?
Yep.
If they're looking for heart procedures, why not the cardiologist? Who's the head of the
Hmm.
cardiology department? If they're looking for, something with ankles, then hey, let's get the ortho guy to write something. So
Hmm.
what are they searching for? Let's feed them the information that they need for their search.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was gonna say. It's really putting yourselves in the shoes of the patient and looking at, what are they searching for? What questions do they want to have answered? And who on your team are the experts that have that authority? The other thing is too, from a PR side, it's a lot of the newsjacking, as we call it. So what's going on in the market in the industry today? And do you have the right SMEs that can address those topics again that are top of mind for folks as they're, watching the news and reading the newspapers?
Well, I will add one thing to this as well, and I know I'm moderating, but I think you would agree with this too. What we see very often in healthcare organizations is that there are strategic priorities that we need to focus on, and within those strategic priorities, there are some providers who are really excellent at being interviewed. They're passionate
Yep.
about the work. They're excited and enthusiastic. They deliver great content. They can talk in a way that, and most providers are very good at talking in ways that patients understand. The other piece that I'll say is, and I want to give credit to this broader team, is that I know that Alloy works really hard on media training
Yep.
for those individuals as well, to not only to identify folks who are good at it, but also to push people over the edge, to give them the skills that they
Yeah.
need to feel comfortable and confident. So I throw in another side just from my own experience working with this great team and watching them develop leaders who become great at giving interviews that advance the objectives of the organization.
Yeah.
Okay, what is one metric? Let me see here. What is one metric each of you would put on a health system marketing dashboard tomorrow that is probably not there today?
Yeah, so I think we're doing some of this now, and I think most health systems are, but I think that unstructured signal piece, right, and really being more focused on the velocity of reviews and the sentiment tracking and understanding what's happening there. I mean, some context to share here is you may have a highly satisfied patient base, right? So they're not writing reviews, but if that velocity is not there and you're not stewarding kind of how you're showing up from a positive sentiment perspective, then that can work against you, right? So it's really thinking through all sides of it. Sometimes something isn't broken, but just having that understanding of what's driving that AI search visibility and how you're showing up is important.
Mhm.
I'd say AI visibility. So it's a metric that is starting to be scored.
Mhm.
It's how often is the brand showing up when you're looking at AI generated answers. So like Andrea mentioned, you go to Google, you type in something, and how often are you popping? Much like SEO, it's
Yep.
how often are you percolate, making your way up to the top. That's not an easy metric to measure. There are some third-party tools that'll do it for you, and Google's getting better with it, and there are some others. So that's the first one I would add because it informs all of the other work you're going to do in that. So if you can get that one right, it starts to lead you down that path. There's 7 or 8 that I would add after, but that would be the first one to go.
And Jeremy, let me say, you certainly, I hope you agree with this. You work very closely with our clients to be able to develop those dashboards and pull in those metrics for them. Number one, understanding what they need, and then number two, creating that digital infrastructure that's going to pull everything in place for them to look at it on a regular basis.
Right.
Andrea, any thoughts related to this?
Yeah, well, Jeremy stole mine because I was going to say an AI visibility score. That was mine. But the other thing along with that is really share of voice. And this is something we are extremely passionate about here at Alloy. So looking at qualitative share of voice. So getting a baseline on how you compare to your competitors on the messages and the types of placements that really matter and move the needle. And then tracking that over time and measuring it quarterly. That is a really big deal to see how you're showing up against your competitors, again, in the sources and in the stories that matter.
Great, great. An additional question here, I think a great one to close on too, and thank you very much, Robert, for sharing this one. I'll ask this a little bit differently. It was a great question. Based on what has been shared, What would you say are two major takeaways from this session? And I'll flip that on its head a little bit just to say, what are the things that you want to, as we talk today and close this session, what do you want to make sure that the people who are listening now know as we leave this discussion? What individually, what are the takeaways that you want to make sure people walk away with? And I'll start with Andrea because she's nodding her head.
Yeah, oh, great. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing here is you need to do some work up front to look at where do you stand right now when it comes to your visibility and how your narrative is showing up in the wild and from an AI perspective. So, if all you leave with today is that I need to do a quick AI research and an audit to see where I show up, I think that's a primary thing and a primary takeaway for sure.
Jeremy.
I think one thing we haven't mentioned, but the patients 45 to 60 are using AI to find healthcare.
Yeah.
Right. So at 2/3 of that date range. So don't think of it as a young man's game or any of that. Patients are using AI to find the healthcare systems. So you need to use AI to get those patients to you. I think that's the one takeaway. I think a web redesign, all those things are great, but you need to get on this program because it's not going away and it's becoming more and more important to you securing patients for the long run.
Charlie, your thoughts?
Yeah, and just to expand on that, I think it's while AI is important, just understanding overall search behavior and intent, right? It continues to change, and it's not just AI or Google, it's social as well. And what constitutes a search engine these days, and how are people searching, and what's important to them? I think the demographic piece of that's important as well. I think how older demographics might be searching and those perceptions that may exist that may not be true, right? As Jeremy mentioned. But also what type of relationships are patients at those various demographic levels looking to have, right? Like we know that, from a primary care perspective, that relationship is much more important for maybe Gen X and folks that, have engaged with and they want to have that direct relationship versus, some of those younger audiences where it's more about getting the convenience factor, right? And getting a resolution and getting it done quickly. And it may not be as much about the expertise or confidence. So that also impacts our tone and voice and how we think about messaging to folks moving forward. And I think that's equally as important.
That's great. Thank you very much. I would put a button on this by saying, the other thing that I've taken away as I listen to you is that this process can be demystified. People shouldn't be scared. It's not the end of the world. In the end, there are new technologies, but what we're keeping our finger on is how consumers behave, what they're using to make decisions. And as I work with this team, and I share this with the folks who are on the call today, it's always exciting for me because their fingers on the pulse of what's next. What do consumers want? How are they connecting with people? And then how do we make sure we're serving our clients to be able to put those people in touch? And ultimately, for healthcare, deliver the care that people need, that they can afford in a timely fashion. That's the most important piece, and that's what providers need. So there is hope, and there are great teams out there, and Alloy is certainly one of them. It can do this. I want to say thank you to the group who's been on the call today. You've done a wonderful job. I get to work with these folks every day, which is really a treat. For anybody on the call, you can too. Not to be too shameless in the plug, but I want to thank you all for your time today in this program. Thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Just to prepare you, just as we did with our last piece, and you can go online, by the way, and see the original webinar, which is an absolutely fantastic one. But we will follow up with links to this webinar. We obviously are going to post this on YouTube and on our own site. We'll have some follow-up. We're also going to connect with you about upcoming webinars. So this healthcare series will continue. If this information was valuable to you, please let us know. We'd love to hear about it. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going in any way, shape, or form, you can certainly access the QR code at the bottom of this slide. We would love to get our team connected with you. Charlie, Jeremy, and Andrea are always available to offer great insights and consultation. They're wonderful people and fun people. You'll love connecting with them. The entire Alloy team is standing by. And this is a really fun time for us as we work with great clients to navigate these opportunities in healthcare. We would love to continue that discussion with you. Based on everything that we've run to today, I wish everybody on this call the best. There's hope for great work ahead of you. And I thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you next time.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.